The Great Compromise, reading on page 237. Several issues divided the delegates to the Constitutional Convention. Some members wanted only to make small changes to the Articles of Confederation, while others wanted to rewrite the Articles. But the delegates who wanted major changes in the Articles had different goals. For example, small and large states had different concerns about representation. States also had different views about regional issues such as slavery. Economic issues such as tariffs also divided Northerners from Southerners. In addition, there was disagreement over how strong to make the national government. After the delegates had met for 4 days, Edmund Randolph of Virginia presented the Virginia Plan. James Madison wrote most of this plan, also called the Large State Plan. It offered a new federal constitution that would give sovereignty or supreme power to the central government. The Virginia Plan divided the national government into 3 branches: executive, judicial, and legislative. Turn the page. The legislature in this plan would be a bicameral or 2-house legislature. This arrangement was similar to that used by several state assemblies. Representatives in the legislature would be chosen on the basis of state populations. Larger states would thus have more representatives than smaller states. Delegates from the smaller states did not like the Virginia Plan. They argued that it would give too much power to the larger states. The delegates debated about the Virginia Plan for 2 weeks. New Jersey delegate William Paterson then presented the small state or New Jersey Plan. This plan proposed keeping Congress's structure the same. It called for a unicameral or 1-house legislature. In this case, each state would have an equal number of votes, giving the smaller states an equal voice in the national government. The New Jersey Plan proposed that all acts passed by Congress should be the supreme law of the respective states. The plan gave the central government the power to tax citizens in all states. It also allowed the government to regulate commerce. Delegates from the large states were against the New Jersey Plan, which would give smaller states more influence. After a month of debate, the delegates were still unable to agree. The convention formed a committee to determine how states should be represented. The committee proposed a compromise, an agreement in which both sides give up some of their demands so that other demands can be met. Some historians call this agreement the convention the Great Compromise. Every state, regardless of its size, would have an equal vote in the upper house of the legislature. This would satisfy supporters of the New Jersey Plan. In the lower house, each state would have a number of representatives based on its population. This proposal would please those who liked the Virginia Plan. The delegates passed the Great Compromise, but there were still problems to settle. The 3/5 Compromise, reading on page 239. The debate over representation also involved some regional differences. Southern delegates wanted slaves to be counted as part of their state populations. This way, they would have more representatives in Congress. Northerners disagreed. They wanted the number of slaves to determine taxes but not representation. To resolve this problem, some delegates proposed counting 3/5 of the slaves in each state as part of its population. This number would then decide how many representatives a state would have in the lower house. New York delegate Gouverneur Morris spoke with such emotion against this idea. However, the delegates voted to accept the so-called 3/5 Compromise. Under this agreement, each slave would, in effect, be counted as 3/5 of a person when determining representation. Another major issue was the foreign slave trade. Some of the delegates wanted the federal government to end the slave trade. These people included George Mason of Virginia and John Dickinson of Delaware. Others said that the southern states' economies needed the slave trade. South Carolina delegate John Rutledge noted, "The people of these states would never be such fools as to give up so important an interest. Some of these Southern delegates even threatened to leave the Union if the Constitution immediately ended the slave trade. Worried delegates reached another compromise. Northern delegates agreed to wait 20 years before seeking to end the slave trade. Southern delegates agreed to stop insisting that laws in Congress be passed with a 2/3 majority vote. Oliver Ellsworth summed up the view of the many delegates. He said, "The morality or wisdom of slavery are considerations belonging to the states themselves."